Welcome to the Rideshare Guy Podcast, where you will learn about the rideshare and mobility industry straight from Harry Campbell, who's got over 5 years experience covering the industry and has talked to thousands of drivers. There's no better place to stay up to date, entertained, and educated. So let's dive in.
So Noah Lang is the founder and CEO of Stride Health, a company helping the 100 plus million people who work for themselves to be more productive and successful and have the economic security they need to thrive. He was previously founding VP of business development at reputation.com, where he oversaw channel distribution, partnerships, and corporate development. Noah graduated from Stanford University as a President's Scholar with a degree in product design, focusing on need finding, user interaction, and product development cycles. He's also an avid runner, skier, and endurance sports junkie. So I'm sort of seeing in your background, Noah, maybe kind of how all of this ties into what you do now at Stride. You guys have a great product and you're helping people with their health. So I guess your bio kind of makes sense for this company that here you are, the founder and CEO of.
Thanks, Harry. Yeah, hopefully my background has built us up. This one thing that you did not mention in my bio is that I'm the brother of a freelance designer, and I'm the son of two independent self-employed workers, one lawyer and one real estate agent. And I think that's also given me a pretty good understanding of some of the gaps that exist for people who don't have a large employer traditional job today and the benefits that they need.
So you've seen it firsthand and maybe even got a little insight from them. And I guess hopefully the real question is hopefully they're using Stride and are active members, right?
They're customers. They may, my parents may be aging into Medicare, but we won't talk about their birthdays live on air.
Yeah. Well, so you've been on the podcast before, and, I guess I would have to even say Stride has been one of our longest tenured and, one of my favorite personal partners for everything that you guys do for gig workers over the years. And I think you guys got started around maybe the same time as me or even earlier. I started my site in 2014. What about yourself with Stride? Is that the same year?
That's when we launched Stride. That's when we got out there and started kind of trying to figure out how to help more people who are working in the gig economy protect their lives, protect their livelihoods, and starting with their healthcare and coverage. Also, kind of in the wake of the Affordable Care Act. That was the first year
that's right.
that you could really go get covered no matter who you are, no matter how much you earned or where you earned or how sick or healthy you were. And so we kind of were born out of the intersection of accessible health coverage and the rise of the gig economy.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, I won't make you retell the whole history of Stride because I do think that we've covered it before on a podcast.
Sure.
And we'll maybe link to that earlier episode. But, the reason why I wanted to have you guys on, you just raised $47 million. So congrats on that. And, before we get into that and sort of what that means for the company and the gig economy at large, why don't you give the quick update, the quick pitch on Stride for those who maybe, like me, don't quite remember the origin story or, quite remember, all that you guys are up to.
I would love to. Thank you, Harry. And the origin story really is one of trying to help people protect their lives and livelihoods. I have a personal passion for healthcare and well-being, and I started Stride right around the time you were a rideshare driver, and you were building your blog at the time, now podcast. And I feel like there's a major gap that existed of people had nowhere else to go to find benefits. And we kind of look at the shiny new, digital-based delivery and gig economy, but this problem has existed for a while, right? Yeah. If you look at, talk to anyone who works in a restaurant and works 20 hours a week, they don't get benefits. Talk to my parents who are self-employed, they don't get benefits. Like there's been a lot of infrastructure and financial security and financial services built around a traditional full-time W-2 job, and everyone who doesn't work in that construct gets left out. And so, the kind of bud that Stride started with was, how do we help people who are totally on their own, who don't have an employer picking a health plan for them, go make a smart decision? And what I'm really passionate about is if you make a smart decision about the right health coverage for yourself, the right, the affordable plan that helps you keep your doctors and helps you access care throughout the year, you're hopefully going to be a much healthier person because you're no longer be scared of the healthcare system, right? You no longer sit there like, I'm sure you have, and I know I do, wondering, I don't feel well, should I go to the emergency room or is it going to be too expensive, right? Like it's a terrible place for people to be. And honestly, that one example is like, that's what motivates me and motivated me to start Stride. And so we started with a really simple website to help you pick a health plan based on your personal finances and based on your healthcare needs. We've evolved a little bit since then
Hmm.
to a company that's now helping any type of independent worker, whether you're a gig economy worker, a part-time employee, a freelancer, even some small businesses, get your own benefits, ranging from healthcare, but also including dental insurance, vision insurance, life insurance, and going so
Yeah.
far as to help you figure out your taxes, lower your tax bill, and find ways to save money on your everyday expenses. Because there's no one else looking out for you. And that's the job that we do at Stride, is helping independent workers save time and money every single day. So you can focus on your gig, focus on your job, and let us take care of everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a great summary. And obviously, I won't rehash everything that you said, because this really is the crux of my whole podcast and my whole business. The fact that these independent workers, don't have a lot of the traditional benefits or traditional support, right? So it creates really interesting opportunities for folks like me on the content and education side, and companies like yours on the benefits and healthcare side. And, like you mentioned, getting into a lot more things related to taxes. How big is the gig economy in regards to Stride? Like what percent or what part of your business is? Seems like it's a pretty big focus, but you did mention that you guys also have, some small businesses, maybe even some lawyers, and, there's a lot of people that technically qualify maybe as, independent workers, right? So actually, maybe that's a good starting point. Like, what do you think of is like your, that total independent worker, and then like, how does it break down in the gig economy, and how do you guys look at it, from like your user standpoint?
Great question. Yeah.
Loaded question. I know.
Nobody is good at sizing the quote unquote
Yeah.
gig economy, right? There's so
Okay.
many different shapes, sizes, and colors of what it means to work on your own. We
Yeah.
start with this lens of kind of everybody who's out there working for themselves in whatever way
Okay.
you define that. Rideshare and delivery is the heart of Stride. You and I met initially around our rideshare and delivery partners, and we work with basically everybody in that space, whether it's Uber, Amazon, Instacart, DoorDash, Grubhub. Anyone who's touching kind of rideshare and delivery,
Yeah.
we have really gotten to know that user base, that American workforce, if you will, and built not just products that are geared towards them, but also, like you, develop some content and guidance. And so a lot of what we do is really geared towards anyone who's working in the delivery economy. We just announced last week we partnered with GoPuff,
I saw
another
that.
partner
Very cool.
in this space. And
there's a lot more of these fast delivery services coming. So it seems like this sector of the gig economy is definitely still growing pretty rapidly.
The American consumer is not patient, and everybody wants their groceries in 5 minutes or less. I'm a little more patient, and obviously we haven't seen the Amazon drones show up yet and just drop stuff on your doorstep. So we're still seeing expansion in the delivery economy, and obviously COVID last year. For all of your listeners who work in delivery, I'm incredibly grateful. My family was fed and kept going in the pandemic, through ordering almost everything online. We got our groceries through Instacart. Amazon showed up on our doorstep every other day as well. We have a couple little kids just like yourself. And so that's a significant portion of Stride. And we hold that, we hold those members near and dear. We have started to touch other parts of the quote unquote gig economy. So, creative freelance workers. So folks who earn a living on Patreon or Etsy also work with us. They have the same benefits challenges and tax challenges that you have when you're a rideshare delivery driver. I mentioned a moment ago in hospitality and retail, we partner with folks like Olive Garden, Red Lobster, The Gap. 80% of workers in hospitality and retail businesses don't get benefits. And last year, a lot of them just lost their jobs. And so Doubly had a need to get help. And then we work with some folks who are kind of traditional self-employed professionals. We work with large groups of realtors, again, who have the same benefits challenges that you might have as a rideshare driver, that they have as a realtor. And they're using a lot of their own cars and their own assets to drive around and run their business, even though they might be associated with a very large brokerage. So we serve a lot of different types of independent workers.
Yeah, it is cool how I think that there are all these different sort of like slivers or sectors of independent work or gig economy. I'm sure we could argue or discuss, the different terminology for these various things. But it does seem like, what we've seen in the gig economy, especially the ride hail and the delivery the last mile delivery focused companies, you do have, we actually have done a number of features on people that have sort of like upskilled into becoming realtors or becoming, sort of what I think of as more of like a true independent professional. channel, right? And you're less kind of, on the Uber platform and more, doing your own thing and doing your own marketing and finding your own clients, right? But a lot of the synergies and parallels are there. You still are responsible for your own healthcare, right? You still have to worry about estimated taxes. So I think that's interesting. And there just are, like you said, a couple of the companies we've been working with lately that are providing, either services or some sort of benefit to, less like direct benefit, but some products for, gig workers. It is amazing, like how many, I feel like every day I'm talking to people and they're like, oh yeah, there's this nurses on demand, or, there's sort of like lawn care, delivery, or, there's all these different services out there. It is really crazy. So it seems like it's a cool, large opportunity for you. You did mention that you guys are working with a lot of these big gig platforms. I think we've even talked about some of the companies like the Uber and the Lyfts that you're doing on kind of the B2B side. Is that, sort of like, I imagine that that's a pretty good source of leads and source of users, right? I mean, I know that Stride, I don't know what you guys call it, but you're like Uber's official healthcare partner, right? If I go onto my Uber driver app right now, I'll see Stride in there. And if I need healthcare, I'm probably going to use them since it's right there in my Uber app, and 2 to 3 million Uber drivers. So I imagine those partnerships are pretty valuable, right?
Yeah, when we first launched Stride, Uber was one of our first partners, actually, and the team then leaned in very hard on needing to help protect the drivers who are on the road every day, and frankly, make it easier to be a gig worker, fill some of these other gaps, right? Everyone who's driving is usually trying to obviously earn an income, right?
Yep.
And if we can find more ways to take the hard work and heavy lifting out of everything that wraps around that, like figuring out your healthcare while you go earn that income, that's what we want to do. And so, yes, I mean, the short answer is we work with over 120 companies now. Uber was one of the first ones, and almost everyone in the gig economy. And that's our focus. We still think we're just getting started. As you mentioned, there's a ton of new organizations coming to the gig economy, and we think it's our job to show up and help people figure out how to navigate their way through it. I never think of, you mentioned leads. I just not to poke at that. I never think of our members as leads, right? I think of you have millions of Americans who are trying to figure out how to make it all work. Yeah. And they need a partner who's going to help them find a gig. Great. There are lots of companies that are fantastic at that. We'll come right alongside that gig and we'll help you figure out how to manage your income, how to keep the most of what you earn, and how to protect your family and your livelihood while you do that. Just like if you get a full-time job, there's usually someone who steps in and delivers your health plan and your benefits and figures out all your payroll. That's our job with these partnerships with the companies that you just mentioned.
Right. And I mean, I'm guessing all of these companies are using 1099 workers, and they sort of have this need for, healthcare, right? Because they're not getting it from their employer. Is that sort of the main value prop in these companies partnering with Stride?
We work with a lot of companies that have 1099 workers, but it's not just 1099. There's plenty of Americans who have W-2 jobs that don't get benefits. Anyone who's listening who works a part-time job, oftentimes you're typically not getting access to benefits. If you work a seasonal job, same thing. And so we don't view it as like a 1099 W-2 world. We just view it as there's lots of Americans who aren't getting benefits from a traditional job, and we're there to help them fill that gap. I think it's interesting. You're seeing, as you mentioned, a lot of these kind of instant delivery type companies. You're seeing experimentation. You're seeing new models come into play, right?
Actually, that's a good point. Most of these instant delivery companies, other than GoPuff, are all using employee model. I mean, they've been sort of primarily more in Europe, but when they're coming to the US, at least they say are using a New York City employee model. And when they plan to expand, they say they're going to use employee model.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Like, let's see, you have some companies like Amazon that have been using both models for a while. You can go be a flex delivery person and be a 1099 flexer, or you can go work as a W-2. And so I think we're going to keep seeing kind of innovation there and changes in the delivery economy. But this is getting off course of your question, which is, yes, typically we're serving people who, for one reason or another, don't get benefits tied to that income stream. And sometimes it's their classification. Sometimes it's just that they're working 10 hours on this delivery platform over here. They have another job that gives them 25 hours, and they still have to go find their own benefits. And so, we're there to complement whatever it is they're doing, however it is they're earning. And the number one reason that these companies work with us is like, I think it's the right thing to do. They see a pain point for people who are coming to them looking for ways to earn, and we help them solve yet another pain point.
Yeah. So one quick question on the business side of partnering with these platforms. You've obviously had a lot of success, 120 different platforms that you partnered with. You guys at this point, I think 7 years plus in the business, and everyone kind of knows who Stride is. But we do get a lot of people, that reach out to me or that are listening or that have ideas, to serve gig workers and want to help them. And, one of the first things they always think is, oh, if I could just get this in front of Uber, they would love it. So I'm curious if you have, actually any tips there, or, even can talk a little bit about what it's like to partner with these platforms. I mean, I'm assuming it's good on the, side of like talking to new members and, kind of putting your product in front of different folks that, would be very well suited for it. But maybe there's some negatives too that you found that, it's not always, the grass is sometimes greener on the other side too. So I'm curious, what tips you have and, sort of maybe one positive, one negative you found from partnering with these platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I think put yourself in the shoes of the worker. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the best platforms out there are thinking about their workers and how their attention is divided and how to focus it and how to give them more chances to earn. And so, I would just always start from that lens of what are the workers doing and how can we help them do that better on these platforms. A lot of people have, as you know, very few minutes left in their day to go think about another thing that they need to do, or frankly, to quote unquote, buy something. We're lucky enough to be in a position to get people really low cost health coverage and save them money on their taxes. And everyone kind of has time for that because it creates net time. So I don't know, I'm not giving exactly advice on how to quote unquote work with Uber, but like think about the end worker and what you're trying to do to enable them better. The other thing I'll mention is, we now have over 2.7 million workers who use Stride. And so we have more folks coming to us, and I'll open the doors, say, give us a call, reach out to us. And we're happy to look at ways we can actually, if you're solving a critical problem around the financial needs of the gig workforce, call us and let's see if we can help get that in front of more people if you're doing real good and creating real value. So that's the other thing that we've seen happen. And I know you and I might get to this, but we started in healthcare and then we've been expanding and solving kind of more problems, whether it's closely related things like your dental or your vision care, or even getting things like life insurance, to solving your taxes, to even for those who use our app today, you've probably seen that you can get access to a broad set of perks to help you save money on the little things that it might take to run your life as a delivery worker, save money on food, save money on auto care, and things like that.
Very cool. Yeah, let's talk about maybe sort of the evolution of the product. So, like I mentioned, you guys did raise $47 million recently. So congrats on that. I mean, I guess first, how does it feel, and what's the plan, to do with this money? Because it definitely sounds like a lot, and it's impressive, I think, for a company that's been helping gig workers, for so long. So, as someone who works with a lot of gig workers, I'm psyched for this. I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, look, the plan is to keep doing what we're doing. This money we raised to go make a positive impact in the world for gig workers. We started with healthcare and coverage. And for those of you listening, we have a pretty unique partnership with the federal government where we're directly integrated with healthcare.gov. So anybody can come to Stride and get access to every health plan in every zip code in the country, can get government tax credits, and spend those on health coverage without ever leaving our experience. So you get a really handheld personal experience. That's kind of foundational to a lot of people when they think about their benefits, right, and their financial needs. We're continuing to expand to solve more financial problems for them. I mentioned, or I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but one of our new backers is Allstate. Another is MasterCard. We're working on ways to actually expand the benefit set to make it easier to manage your benefits where you're getting paid. And, as a rideshare delivery driver, it's not just about healthcare, it's about your car and all the other parts of your personal life that are now commingled with doing this job, doing this gig. And so you'll see us insure more of those risks and help people manage sometimes the headache around understanding how to use their personal assets, how to expense those things, and how to take home more of what they're earning every single day. So,
So I'm curious,
Yeah.
how do you think about these different, one of the things that I think is often challenging for folks coming into the gig economy is like you have so many things to worry about, right? And I remember when I was writing my book for Uber and Lyft drivers, I really wanted to think about it like in an A to Z way, like, okay, what's realistic? Like realistically, you probably should buy a phone mount to start and, just put your phone on the mount. Second, consider rideshare insurance, then think about a dash cam, then think about tracking your miles, right? Like if you hit like a brand new driver who's just trying to like has maybe never even called an Uber before, like with everything that they technically need to do, you could imagine it's just overwhelming and not really feasible. So I'm sort of curious how you think about these different aspects. Like obviously healthcare is one that I'm curious what you guys have found, but I would imagine that it actually doesn't affect a ton of people in the gig economy, right? Because they've got sources of healthcare from their spouse or Medicare or Medicaid or VA. So I'm kind of curious what numbers, but obviously if you don't have healthcare, it's like very impactful to a smaller number of people would be my guess, versus things like literally every single driver has to have insurance, right? And they've got to pay for it, or they've got to half of them sometimes upgrade to rideshare insurance. So how do you think about the different I guess benefits or features that you can kind of help your members with?
Yeah, you're right. You can't go make a delivery unless you have a vehicle or a bike,
right?
Depending on where you're delivering. And you got to have insurance if you want to go do that. You have to be cleared through the platform, right? And get a good background check in order to engage in that work. I'll start with healthcare, and then I'll talk about taxes. You're right. Like you don't have to have insurance to go start a new gig. What we often see is, one, a lot of people who are entering the gig economy are doing so because they lost another job. Right? Or they're missing another income stream. And we saw this especially so in 2020 and even into 2021, as a lot of people lost their jobs, right? We saw airline pilots going into delivery. We saw people who used to, work in a retail store or in a restaurant shift to doing delivery, sometimes for that same retail or restaurant store. And folks were losing some of these benefits, going out and seeking an income. And in the wake of a global healthcare pandemic, lacking insurance. And so, it's one of those things that it might be easy to skip over, but it's a really critical risk. And we see almost a third of people in the gig economy going uninsured today, and that terrifies
me. That's pretty high.
Yeah, and the terrifying
that's really
thing
high, actually.
Or the very unfortunate thing is that the number one people go uninsured is they think they can't afford it. And if you look at the Affordable Care Act and now the American Rescue Plan Act, you've got actually 4 out of 5 Americans qualify for coverage for less than $10 a month. And we're now getting almost half. We're at 44% of people who are getting insured in 2021 on fully fledged major medical insurance are paying $1 or less. So almost free.
So how specifically how specifically does that work? Because I think that we have talked about this, and sort of this is one of the things that we highlight to a lot of people. So it totally resonates with me is that sometimes like people don't even know that they can get it, right? It seems like that education part is the challenge. So what are like the specifics of how that works and sort of who qualifies, and how do I get to pay $1 a month for my insurance? Who do I need to be? What do I need to do?
Yeah. So the only thing that really depends on is how much you earn.
Yeah.
Right. So if anyone wants to go right now to stridehealth.com, you can enter your zip code, give us your age, your gender. We don't track any of this. You can do it anonymously and put in your income. And we'll also look at your doctors and your drugs and help you make a decision that way. But when you put in your income, you'll see how much you can save on coverage.
Yeah.
The Affordable Care Act created these things called tax credits that you can spend in real time. So if your health insurance costs $500 a month and you qualify for $499 in tax credits, you're only going to get charged $1. So that's really all it comes down to is how much you're earning. And what we saw with the American Rescue Plan, which came out just earlier this year, again, in the wake of the pandemic, was that they increased the tax credits available. So more people qualify for tax credits. Before, if you made over, say, $45,000 a year, you didn't qualify for anything. Now we see freelancers making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year qualify for some form of tax credit. So that's how it starts. We help you on Stride. We can take care of that for you. You can also go to a government exchange and do it that way. We think we do it. a bit of a better
Well,
job and
I
hold your
guess what's
hand through the whole
interesting
experience.
too, and is the kind of big, what's the word? The big, not caveat, but the big important thing that we like takeaway we've seen for drivers. Like if you're really aggressive, or not even aggressive, I mean, just like tracking all your miles. Obviously Stride has a mileage tracking app that we're a big fan of, and we recommend to a lot of our users. I think we've signed up a lot of people. They can actually, like, your net income is actually ends up being pretty low, even though you might make pretty decent money as a driver or a delivery person. And then I think that's what the income that then goes and is used to determine, right? Because you're mentioning these numbers like 60, 70, 80,000, and I think after all of your expenses, it's going to be pretty hard, at least like your taxable income, right? It's going to be pretty hard to get to that point in a good way, right? Like your
Yep.
actual income might be higher, but on net, it might be a lot lower. I remember one of the articles we did where Jay on our team earned over 100, he's in SF and driving 40, 50 hours a week, and earned over $100,000 on Uber and Lyft one year just from driving. And his net taxes were like $15,000 or $20,000. And he was much more on the aggressive side of taking deductions and all that. But yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yep. And so you can make, so you're right, it is based on your or your taxable income.
Right.
So you can make twice what Jay made, and you're probably going to still qualify for free health insurance in terms of your taxable income. Which brings me to your, back to your question around what matters as you're getting started, right? What's day 1, day 10, day 100 working in the gig economy? I think, obviously healthcare is foundational, and it's oftentimes just where people are when they're starting that type of work. They need that coverage. But your taxable income is tremendously confusing for people, right? And you're right, we have a free mileage tracking app because it's the number one way to save when you're working in the delivery economy. I mentioned realtors, same for them, right? A ton of miles you put in your car. But if you're delivering, you're driving all day, every day. And what we found is, yes, people can actually get, they can get refunds, right? Especially if you're driving a Prius or another very efficient vehicle, based on the mileage reimbursement. Track every single mile. And if you don't start on day 1, you're missing out. And so I put that right up there with, get your car, get your insurance, and track mile 1. Because, you're getting back 50 plus cents every time you drive in terms of your taxable wages. And in California, where we have Prop 22 now, you and I might debate that in a moment or two, you actually get a mileage reimbursement, but you can still deduct your mileage, right? That's confusing for a lot of folks. You can do that. And so I think it's one of the biggest opportunities to increase your profitability as a rideshare or delivery driver. And I'll share a stat with you that, Harry, we haven't shared anywhere else.
All right,
I just checked. We have tracked well over 4 billion miles for delivery workers now. And that's free money back in your pocket if you know how to handle that well. And it ties, as you pointed out so eloquently, right over your healthcare and your benefits. The better job you do deducting your expenses, the lower your premiums are going to be for things like your healthcare. And obviously, the more profitable your gig work is going to be.
No, I think that's super cool. And definitely, that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize. I mean, it's kind of obvious, maybe not obvious, but, it makes sense once you hear it, is that, Uber and Lyft drivers, they put a lot of miles on their car every week. And, food delivery, I think less so. One of the things that, the companies do provide some, tracking of online miles and things like that. So it's sort of like, it's a picture of what you can deduct, but, definitely that's why we always recommend the third-party apps like a Stride, so that you get that full picture. You mentioned delivery a few times now, and I think that is one of the big things that has shifted since we've last chatted. And it's something that I've seen personally in my audience. Since you're sharing never before heard stats, I'll share one off the top of my head, and it's more general. Just in the past year and a half, I mean, our top content by traffic is all last mile delivery stuff, and that really never happened before. It was always Uber and Lyft were kind of the top dogs, and now it's all sorts of last mile delivery. GoPuff just jumped into our top 10 posts about 6 months ago, and so we're obviously seeing this explosion in last mile delivery for the reasons you mentioned. I know you guys just released some stats. What have you seen, maybe over the past year and a half, and what's led you? What do you guys think about this last mile delivery industry these days?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing. Look, I think it was obviously a trend before 2020. Right. The pandemic accelerated it because almost everyone started getting delivery and didn't want to leave their homes anymore. And I think it retrained all of us as consumers around like how we might want to buy goods or services or get food. So I think that we can't underestimate the impact that COVID had on that. What we're seeing is most first-time gig workers, most new entrants here are starting with delivery or grocery, right? 62% of people now are starting gig economy work. Versus if you compare that to people who have been doing this for 3+ years, it's around 42% of people. And it's kind of the inverse trend with rideshare, right? 7% of people who are just starting gig work, we define that as they're in their 0 to 6 months in, are doing ride hailing or rideshare. And so obviously this has grown the pie, right? There are many more Americans now working in the gig economy, and a lot of people are starting with delivery, which is a totally new trend.
Yeah. Well, why do you think that is? And I guess just to, I'll summarize quickly, right? Because, we're doing a lot of math on this podcast now, but it sounds like basically newer entrants in the gig economy are kind of trending more towards delivery, and older folks, not by age, but people who have been in the gig economy for a long time, kind of skew more towards rideshare. So what are the reasons why you think more people are getting into delivery these days? Is it more competitors, or, people are like, I'm overdriving people, I'd rather have a burrito in the back of my car? What have you seen?
All of the above. I mean, I think that we're not seeing the kind of, rapid incentivization, or at least I'm not, that we saw in the early days of rideshare, right? Yeah. Uber versus Lyft going head to head, right? Ratcheting up the bonuses. I think we're seeing an overall bigger pie, right? There are a lot more Americans who, and frankly, it's a global trend, are comfortable ordering things online and having them delivered to your front door, right? And it's happening faster. To your point, I think a big part of it is we're still seeing rideshare kind of catch up post-COVID. I don't know if we can say post-COVID yet, but as we start to come out of the pandemic, there's more people who are getting comfortable getting in cars. But I think, understandably so, a lot of drivers aren't yet ready to get back in there in the driver's seat and be exposed to many more people than just the one driver that I might be exposed to as a passenger. Yeah, true. I think that's playing a role. And then, I think that you're right. Delivery is a totally different, I think, way of working. I have done rideshare. I have actually never done delivery, full disclosure. But you don't have to talk to anybody. You can pick up many things and take them on one straight path, right? Yeah. Versus kind of many stops, multi-stop. And I think that appeals more to certain people who might not have otherwise jumped in to the gig economy. These are my assumptions based on the anecdotal data we get back. The other interesting
you've got 2.7 million workers, so you are kind of a good person to talk to about this.
Yeah, but it's changing. I mean, it's changed a ton every month as different kind of impacts of the pandemic are felt. The other super interesting one is, used to be, I think, as the digital gig economy was kind of getting started, there were a lot of men doing the work. Yeah. Right? Much more masculine workforce. Now we're seeing more women enter the gig workforce, but they're starting with delivery. And so we actually saw almost 2/3 of new entrants are women. I am obviously, maybe not obviously, but I'm not a woman. And but from talking to women who are starting out, they feel like sometimes it's more appealing to go do delivery versus rideshare, right? It might be safer, might be easier, might be great, like have more flexibility in terms of the times of day that might be peak hours. And so I just think we're seeing a lot more people enter the gig economy, and it's a larger pie and there's more choice. And a lot of that choice is being directed towards delivery today. I think there's a huge still shortage of rideshare drivers. We're seeing that reflected in some of the pricing, right? There's a lot of demand from people who are ready to get back in cars and travel as passengers. And we're just still seeing people get warmed back up to, I want to be a driver of people again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense and echoes what I've been thinking. I mean, it almost seems like, there's a lot going on, but it does seem like in a way the pandemic kind of like nudged a lot of folks over to delivery in various ways. I think like the most common anecdote that I think kind of sums it up well is that, a lot of people kind of like tried delivery and they were like, hey, I put less miles on my car. I don't have to deal with, annoying and drunk people, it's a little bit easier, right? Like I get a lot of time to listen to podcasts, right? So even if, the income may actually, in some cases, I think is kind of tilting back towards rideshare driving, that it actually favors. I think you can make more driving Uber and Lyft. I just posted a screenshot of one of our top contributors here in LA, drove 15 hours last weekend for Uber over Halloween and made $60 an hour. So, I think the earnings are tough to beat on Uber and Lyft, but you're dealing with very different things from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. on Saturday night, Halloween weekend, than you are delivering food. So I think that definitely makes a lot of sense. And especially, I've heard heard from a lot of female drivers that exactly what you mentioned. I mean, like, frankly, a lot of female drivers, like, it's kind of a rough job sometimes driving for Uber and Lyft. You know, that your passengers get to rate you. And especially if you're driving Friday, Saturday nights, you know, they might hit on you, they might be inappropriate, they might be drinking. So, you know, it's, you know, like, frankly, like for some female drivers, you know, they tell me they don't like it. It kind of sucks in certain respects. So totally makes sense that they would jump into, you know, these last mile delivery services for all those reasons and probably more.
Yeah. Well, that's one really sad and disturbing that happens to so many women working in rideshare. But the expansion of the gig economy, you know, hopefully means there's more choice, right? There's more options, there's more flavors. I also think that we're seeing people who still just dip their toes into this way of work, right? Who want to, I don't know, dash for 5 or 10 hours, right? I think that maybe we'll see. I don't know. This is me totally making things up, but the earnings opportunities you just saw for someone who wants to go work kind of near full hours on rideshare, maybe we'll see people continue to move in that direction. But if you want to dip your toe in the water, delivery kind of feels easier and lighter to go and get started.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it'll be interesting to keep an eye on it, and I appreciate you guys releasing all this interesting data. We'll leave a link. I think there was a Business Insider article that went into some more details on some of the stats that you guys released. My last question before you go is, what's next for Stride? You know, we talked a little bit about you want to expand into more verticals and kind of keep providing gig workers. What should we expect over the next 7 years of Stride's lifetime? Because I've known you for 7, so I'm expecting there'll be at least another good 7 years in you.
Oh yeah. Well, that's a long way to look out, but I'll give you an anchor here,
Sure.
Which is, look, I think we have a broken benefit system, and I'm going to zoom way out for a minute here. This isn't just the gig economy, right? We've talked about hospitality, retail jobs. It didn't work for my family, right? My sister's a designer, my dad is an attorney, my mom's a realtor, and I think the gig economy has created faster and easier ways to get income. And maybe in some ways has created a brighter light on some of the cracks in our current benefit system. And so has COVID, because we saw millions of American workers lose their jobs. And because your benefits are tied to your job, you lost healthcare in the middle of a global pandemic. And that is my lens on why we exist and why we're here. And I think we're just getting started. You know, one, you should see us continuing to deeply serve the rideshare and delivery-based economy. That is where we started. We have a ton of affinity for the challenges that workers face and the opportunities that they see. And as you mentioned, many more types of businesses are starting up there every single day. And so, you know, you'll see us expanding the benefits and making it easier to understand what you earn, how much you're taking home, and how to put money on the side, whether it's for your taxes or for your insurance premiums, to protect those hard-earned dollars. And you'll see us serving many more types of quote unquote gig workers that might not fit into the types of work that you talk about on this podcast every day, with an end goal of what we think is a pretty ambitious task of building a new type of benefit system that it doesn't matter where you work, you can get access to coverage, you can take it from job to job, gig to gig, and we can give you a full package of benefits that look and feel like what I might get in a full-time paycheck. Or my amazing team at Stride might get in a full-time paycheck that you don't get if you're starting up your own business, if you're working as an independent contractor, or sometimes if you're even just a part-time worker. So that's a big zoom out. Our benefit system is 70 years old. It was started in the wake of World War II, and I think it's broken. We're here to fix it, and we're fixing it starting with rideshare delivery and gig workers.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good lofty goal over the next, 5 to 10 years, is to sort of basically fix the benefit systems. I feel like we're like coming up with some good slogans. Like the first one, I didn't say it, but I was like, track every last mile or something like that was one thing that came to my head when we were talking about the mileage tracking. And now it's like, let's fix this benefit system. But I think that's a cool mission. And obviously like this plays, everything that you're doing with gig workers and drivers and all that plays really well into it, because there is. It's like almost every day. I was reading a New York Times article this morning, and it talked about some Substack writers who, were like very hesitant to leave their job because of healthcare, right? So it's sort of like very, you just see it in all of these different freelance, sort of self-employed verticals. So I think there's definitely some issues, but luckily we've got you guys and the team at Stride to help get everything fixed up.
Yeah, and look, not everyone is doing work in the gig economy because they decided to leave something and chase their passion, right? Some are, some aren't. But man, wouldn't it be wonderful if you didn't have to think about switching your doctor when you switch jobs, right? Or having to change your 401k and figure out this rollover if you're lucky enough to have some money put in retirement so you can go chase some other dream. And I know that's not what the instance that everyone is dealing with, but just more flexibility in accessing new ways of work. I think that's what is made possible if we create a more flexible and individualized benefit system. And I'll share one more interesting stat with you, which back in 2016, we surveyed our Stride members, and we had far fewer than 2.7 million at that point in time. But 9% of them said, I have no plans to stop doing independent work ever. Like, I'm going to do this forever, as long as I possibly can. A smaller segment had, a 1 year outlook, a 2 year outlook, a 6 month outlook. We just surveyed our membership again, and 2/3, 67% said they have no plans to stop doing independent work. Like, this is the way people want to work today. They're figuring it out. Maybe they're commingling and mixing a bunch of different gigs. This is how people want to work. And yet we haven't changed how you go get access to your benefits. And so that's kind of what drives us and motivates us. And for all the listeners out there, we want to hear more from you about where you want help. We know that folks want to go figure out their healthcare. We also really want to figure out how to set some money aside and save. I want access to things like, PTO. Like, there's a bunch of problems that aren't necessarily solved with selling you another product, if you will, right? Or buying another insurance that remain to be solved in the gig economy.
Definitely. Very cool. Well, if folks want to learn more, I'm going to send them to stridehealth.com if that works. And actually, while you were talking earlier, I did actually fill out a quote as you were talking about it in real time. And it was pretty easy. I entered my location and did my applicants and quickly went through some of the assumptions, but it did work pretty well. So we'll send them there. And anything else that they should know about Stride or where they should go to get more? Stridehealth.com.
Stridehealth.com. It doesn't cost a dime to use us. We'll help you lower your insurance premiums. We don't charge you anything for that. We'll help you track your miles and figure out your taxes. We don't charge you anything for that either. And we'd love to help out more of your listeners, Harry. So thanks for having me on. It's fun. And thank you for celebrating our fundraise, but we're pouring that all back into figuring out more ways to help make independent work sustainable and help your listeners thrive.
Great. Thanks, Noah. Take care.